everyone! So I can't believe that January has come and gone so soon, and since I didn't read a whole lot in the first month of the year, I figured I would combine my wrap-up and my TBR for February. This month I was so busy with freelance projects and personal life that I only read 4 books, and actually one of them was really short. But they were all really different and I enjoyed them all in different ways. So with that, let's just get into it. Oh, also, I'm probably not gonna go into a lot of detail here because actually I wrote in-depth reviews for 3 out of the 4 books. So you can check them all out. I'll leave them all down below. The first book I read / listened to was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire-Sons. This is a touching coming-of-age contemporary YA story about 2 boys, Ari and Dante, and their unique experiences in El Paso, Texas, with their Mexican-American families. This is a love story, but at the heart of it, it's really a story about friendship and family. And while it had its really deeply moving moments, I do have to say that I felt like they were a little bit few and far between. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this story. I think that it was just a little bit overhyped for me, but that said, I can totally understand why this is a favorite for a lot of people. So as I mentioned in a couple of other videos, I listened to this book and the narrator was Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he did an excellent job. I've said it before, but I just really feel like they couldn't have picked a better narrator. That said, I don't think that I'm going to be listening to YA books on audio anymore because there's just, I don't know if it's the main contributor to how I felt about this book, but I don't know, there's something about that angst that comes across a little bit too much in an audiobook. I will say I was touched by a lot of moments in a lot of the writing, especially when it came to Ari and his family, particularly his relationship with his dad and how they were just fighting these private wars together. Just watching them kind of grow in this emotional honesty and vulnerability was really unique and kind of what I look for in a coming-of-age story. Overall, though, I just felt a little bit underwhelmed, and you can read more about that in my blog post at molliereads.com. I also finally read We Should All Be Feminist by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I have been wanting to read this forever. January of this year was the perfect time to read this book for so many reasons, and I'm so glad I finally got to it. I knew going into this that it was going to be a really important read, and that I was really going to love a lot of the definitions of feminism and gender equality and just kind of that fundamental understanding of feminism. I just really loved how she conveyed that sense of shame that is placed, you know, however seemingly subtle, upon girls at a really young age. This is really an intro to feminism and gender studies, but I feel like it's just such an important, like I said, fundamental book for change that needs to happen. And so it really is something that I would encourage everyone to read. There really isn't anything to not like about it. Like, I would say the only downside is that it's so short. I mean, it's an essay. It started out as a TED Talk, I believe, and it's only like 50 pages. So yeah, the fact that I count this as one of my 4 books in January is kind of sad, but the content is just so much bigger than itself. So even though it was short, it did kind of whet my appetite for more literature on feminism and female empowerment. And yeah, I thought it was the perfect read for January. The next book I have that I read in the month of January is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. You guys know that I loved this book. Like, I really loved this book. It was so atmospheric and enchanting and beautifully written. It's just full of magic and mystery. And actually, I didn't mention this in my book review, but there are these events in this book called midnight dinners, and they're kind of like these, you know, over-the-top feasts with entertainment and food, like 5-course meals, and it's just, you know, over-the-top, extravagant, luxurious dinners for people who are in the circus or people who are involved in the circus in some way, and it's just this intimate gathering of just the most interesting people. And it has a very like Gatsby-esque party feel to it. So anyway, while I was reading this book, I fell in love with the idea of midnight dinners, and I decided that I was going to throw a midnight dinner this month in February with some of my friends who also read this book this month. My friends here in my real physical life. And yeah, so we're going to be having a midnight dinner, and I may or may not be planning this so much, like putting more effort into this than my own wedding. So I'm slightly kidding, but also I'm seriously going all out for this and I'm so excited. But anyway, yes, I did a separate book review for this book, so you can go and check that out as well. Last but definitely not least, I read The Mothers, a novel by Britt Bennett, and this is a debut novel, and it is so wonderful and so heartbreaking. I can hardly bear it. This book, oh my gosh, it's just the most heart-wrenching, beautiful book. This is a debut novel. I can hardly believe it. Yeah, it's just full of grief and love and loss, and it's just charged with emotion. I cannot believe the writing in this book, especially for a debut author. It's like the kind of book that you read and reread the sentences over and over because it's just so beautiful, and it somehow captures the human experience in a way that is just so rare. This book made me grieve for my gender, and actually it made me think a lot about We Should All Be Feminist. And I should back up here and say that I got both of these books together in the quarterly literary box, which I did an unboxing, and I'll link that down below as well. But it was an author curated box, and Britt Bennett included a few books that inspired her to write The Mothers, and We Should All Be Feminist was one of them. So I read them both this month, and I'm really glad that I did because I could just see that influence so much. The hardships that girls and women face just because of their gender, and just that expectation for them to become mothers, and that shame that's placed upon them from an early age. It was just so heavy in this book. The Mothers is about a girl named Nadia who kind of loses herself in partying and skipping school and just kind of going off the deep end a little bit because her mother committed suicide. And during that time, she kind of sparks a romance with this boy named Luke, who's the pastor's son, and her relationship with him ends very abruptly. And she's kind of left constantly wondering what her life could have been like. And she also meets a God-fearing girl named Aubrey who becomes her best friend. And the three of them, the story just kind of follows the three of them over many years. And you can just see how grief and loss and love weighs on them as teenagers and as young adults. Yeah, this book is about how we carry loneliness, how we carry grief, and just the things that we never say to the people that we love. It was so beautifully written. I will definitely be picking up the next book that Britt Bennett writes. And now for the books I plan to read in February. I'm finally starting The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Guys, I am jumping on that bandwagon. It may seem too late, but I'm doing it. So what I've learned about the Raven Cycle series is that it's kind of like a fantasy / magical realism / paranormal sort of story. It's about a girl named Blue whose mother is described as clairvoyant. And these 4 boys who attend this local private school, and the private school boys are referred to as the Raven Boys. Honestly, I don't know that much about the plot of this book, except that her whole life, she's kind of warned that she'll be the cause of her true love's death. Which is really intriguing. But honestly, yeah, I've seen this obviously around BookTube. And I always fast forward when people start talking about this series because I don't want to know that much about it. I really want to go into it blindly because I just have this feeling that I'm going to love it. So I can't tell you that much about the plot. Hopefully I'll be able to tell you more in my wrap up. But I'm really, really excited, and I have high expectations, so I'm really hoping that it won't be overhyped for me. I also plan to read The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin O'Leary-Sans, so the same author of Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. The whole reason I read Aristotle and Dante this month was so that I could get familiar with his writing, because this book was sent to me by the publisher, this arc. It comes out on March 7th of this year. And so I wanted to read Aristotle and Dante first since it was such a popular book. But yeah, I think this one, a lot of people are expecting this one to be just as good. And I'm really excited to see how I enjoy it because it's not every day that I listen to an audiobook that I feel okay about and then read immediately a book that author wrote, physically read that book. So I think it might give me some insight into how much listening to an audiobook has kind of changed the way I think about a story. So if I fall in love with this book, I may try to physically read Aristotle and Dante. But anyway, this book was sent to me by HMH Kids. and it's about a boy named Saul who lives with his adoptive gay father and his Mexican-American family. It's his senior year, and all we know is that he's kind of wrestling with a lot of questions, and he's wrestling with love and identity and loss and all of these questions about who he is, which is very reminiscent of Aristotle and Dante. I think his best friend Samantha is kind of helping him with all of these universal questions about belonging. And yeah, I think it's going to be really good. Fingers crossed that I really enjoy this one. I have heard that it's pretty funny and warm-hearted, so we shall see. I also really want to finally finish Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. My husband has been reading this book since I got it for Christmas, and I finally stole it from him because #married life. I just couldn't wait any longer, so I snatched it up. This is the second book in a duology. The first book is Six of Crows, which I actually have right here. And they're some of the most beautiful books ever. I mean, black pages, red pages, so cool. You've probably seen this book all over BookTube. You probably know what it's about, or at least Six of Crows, you probably know what it's about. But yeah, I'm just really excited to get back into the world of Kaz Brekker. And I don't know a lot about the second book because I was just so afraid of spoilers. But what I can tell you is a little bit about Six of Crows, the first book. It's a YA fantasy heist story about this gang of misfits and thieves. And the characterization was so excellent. The plot towards the end was just so well thought out. I mean, I had a serious book hangover when I finished this book. And from what I hear, Crooked Kingdom is just as good, if not better. So I'm really excited to finally get to this. It did take me a little while to get through this, surprisingly. I don't even think it's that... Okay, so it's like 450 pages or so. But because it's fantasy, there are a lot of character introductions, so it was a little bit slow for me because I think this was like one of the first fantasy books, YA books that I really got into. So yeah, I'm expecting that there are going to be a lot of new characters in this book, maybe, I don't know. But I'm hoping that it reads fairly quickly. Now, this is going to be really ambitious for me because the month of February, like I said, is going to be super busy with projects. I'm starting an editing class this month. It's just gonna be a lot. And you know, there aren't as many days in February, but I wanted to add this to my TBR anyway, even if I don't finish it. I wanna get to the second book in the Mistborn series, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I have been wanting to read this ever since I finished The Final Empire, which was so good, so good. It's an adult fantasy book. It's about this omnipotent Lord Ruler who dominates the Final Empire and enslaves this group of people referred to as the Ska. He enslaves them for 1,000 years, and the Ska people just don't really have a lot of hope until a character named Kelsier comes in to the scene. And he is so fantastic in this book. So Kelsier is a thief and a con artist, and he kind of convinces a group of people that they can overtake the Lord Ruler. And so the story kind of follows Kelsier and his gang of misfits and thieves. Very similar kind of vibe to Six of Crows, in my opinion. So we get to know him and his gang of kind of like-minded criminals. And their whole plan for how to overthrow the Lord Ruler. The best part of this book, other than the deepened characterization, is the magic system. So Kelsier is a Mistborn, which means that he can adopt these certain magical abilities by ingesting different kinds of metals. It's so detailed, and like I was just so impressed with the magic system the whole way through. But yeah, it's action-packed, but it's also emotionally charged, and it's just so good. Vin, the teenage girl that Kelsier takes under his wing, is just one of my favorite characters. Watching her develop and kind of grow to love other people and accept herself, it was just so beautiful, and there's just this theme of adoption throughout this book, and I loved it. I keep saying this book like this is the Final Empire, but this is the second book, The Well of Ascension, that I actually plan to read this month. And I'm really excited to get to it. I'm hoping that it's just as good, and from what I hear, it's even better than the first one, so I'm excited. Those are the books I plan to read in February. I know that's only, was it 4 books, I think? But some of them were pretty chunky, and like I said, it's gonna be a crazy month for me, so that would be impressive. If I can finish that, I will be thrilled. Anyway, let me know what you plan to read in the month of February. I hope you're all having a great month so far, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.